Okay, so moving on to breakdown keys, otherwise known as the keys between the keyframes. So I'm going to look for a space between the keyframes where it's got a big gap and it feels like the descent from this high point here, the start of the descent, and to the stretch position, just so our feet hit the ground, there's a big gap there, which would be nice to start filling in the blanks. So let's go halfway between these two keys, and then I'm going to select all the controls and just left click drag the two keys either side and just switch to linear, and that will Maya will then give us its idea of the spacing and timing, which we can use as a starting off point. So I'll just press S to set a key, and then I'll switch everything back to stepped and just scrub through and just see what that gives us, just comparing against the reference. And it feels, looking at the reference in our animation, that our guy is dropping faster than in the reference. So I think we need to grab hold of him and raise him higher on our new breakdown. So I'll grab hold of the body control and just raise him up. I'll fix the hands and feet afterwards, but for now let's just try and get his gross movement working better. Just watching the hips as they travel, trying to get that hang time, trying to get the arc correct. Again, always checking back to that reference all the time. Something that we can use to help us is the graph editor, which we haven't really looked at so far. All these different coloured lines are plotting the motion of our controls, so it will change for each control you have selected. At the moment we have the body control selected, and on the left here you can see all of the attributes, the translation and the rotation attributes. So we're at the moment looking at translate Y, which is the up and down. So left click translate Y on the left, and it will isolate the translation Y curves. And I can see the up and down on the curve here. So if I scrub through, you can see that the keys are higher when our guy is high, and they start dropping when our character starts dropping. So you scrub through and just think about the translate Y, the up and down. Here is the keys where we're on the platform because they're stationary. Then we see move into our first launch key, our high point, our start to descend. And of course the breakdown key, which we are currently working on. So if we select this key, and just looking the reference, just checking what happens, and actually I feel like our breakdown key is quite a similar height to our initial jump key. So I now have a visual reference in the graph editor, and I can lift it to a similar height of that key and know that I am matching the position because the graph tells me so. So you just place it higher, then see how it feels. So that's feeling more like the reference, just with a bit of analysis of the graph and checking back to the reference. But I think actually I might make it a little bit higher and just exaggerate that hang time. Maybe not too high. We'll see how that feels as we progress. But we'll just keep playing with it, checking against the reference, moving up and down. I don't want it to have too fast a fall. Our platform is slightly higher than the one in the reference, so if our guy starts falling faster than in the reference from a greater height, it's going to make gravity feel wrong. It's going to make him feel like he's being pulled down to the ground rather than falling with natural physics. But for the moment, as we're just blocking, we'll start getting these poses in, and we can play slightly with timing afterwards. So that feels pretty good for the height of the hips at the moment and the body control. So let's start correcting the rest of the body. So let's start with the legs, the feet. I'm going to raise those up. Again, stepping through, checking the reference. I think it would be nice to give these legs a little bit more hang time, a bit more squash. Exaggerate slightly what's happening in the reference. It's always nice to have the lead and follow, so the hips are leading the descent and the feet are just going to take a little bit longer to descend. So as the hips come down, the feet are just going to not drop quite as quick, which will make them feel like they're rising a little. And then the hands, so I'm going to grab that and just roughly get it into position, pull the elbow down, get the hand. I see it's, in the reference it's a bit below my face. Let's just scrub through and watch where the path of that hand is going. And make sure we get a nice arc on its path of motion. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit and looking in the perspective view and just pulling that around, making sure we've got the strong wrist. And then I want to do a similar thing on the hand as we did on the feet. So again, it's about the lead and follow. So if I look at the hand here and look at the reference, I'm just going to have that hand just start to rise slightly as the body starts falling. Just offset that motion so we get nice organic motion. You never really want anything to move at the same time as something else. If the feet and the hands all drop to the ground at the same speed as the hips, it would feel very stiff and you'd get more of a robotic feeling. But to get nice organic motion, you want to try and offset the motion of the things that are connected to our hips, so the legs, the arms, the head, the chest. Have everything lead from the hips, especially on something like a fall. Those hips are going to drop, and the other parts of the body aren't going to drop quite as quickly, which will make them feel like they're slightly rising, as I mentioned. And just grab his right arm and just getting that into a position similar to the reference, really. Let's place it there and see how it feels when we step through. But it's quite nice that it's got a stretch on it that maybe you wouldn't expect to be there if you didn't have any reference to look at. If I just press the Q key, it will select the select tool, which doesn't use a axis. So it just means that if sometimes you're viewing your animation and that is getting in the way of you viewing it properly, just press Q to switch from the translation tool and you can then step through and see it more clearly. I think I'll just move that hand just out of the way of the face here, just so I can see the eye. It'd be nice to not lose contact with the eyes of the character. Oh, and what I haven't done yet is zero out the chest, which is a bit naughty, because obviously that's going to affect my arm position, but let's have a look at what it's doing in the reference. So it looks like it starts to lean back, so again it's that lead and follow. You can see the hips start falling and the chest is just leaning back, so you get the feeling of it rising. It's not actually rising obviously, but it's just the motion is offset from what the hips are doing. Just have a quick look in the graph at the rotate X and see that it is starting to lean back, so that's good. Let's have a quick step through. It's feeling better, isn't it? It's nice starting to get it fleshed out now. So I think that is good for the moment. I think we should move on to the next breakdown.